Back in the early 2000s, we had a blog. It was called Looking for Geeks, and I did a segment called Life in a Box, which was actually a throwback to Kane's original blog, where he talked about miniature gaming and geeky subjects. I would write a lot of essays that would tie together geek culture and just general life subjects. And one of my favorites that I wrote was about Princess Jellyfish, which I will be doing in a video format sometime very soon, probably for SakuraCon. We'll see how that all plays out. My first life in the box is actually kind of a serious thing. I watch a lot of anime, and anime is an important part of my life. I've been watching anime since I was a little kid, when Voltron and Unico and all of those great shows were on in the 80s. Speed Racer, Galaxy Force, all the old ones where they're like really weird, skinny, tall characters, and they always had like an animal companion and some plucky small child that ran around with them. That is the era of anime that I started with. And I never really felt like I identified with any of those characters, even though I loved anime and all facets of anime. But in the past few years, I've really found I identify with slice of life characters the most. And I finally found a character who really embodies characteristics that I have. And that is recovery of an MMO junkie.
I'm Moriko Morioka, 30 years old. Recent corporate dropout and neat. I'm not your average neat schmuck, though. I chose the neat life. I'm an elite neat. He's perfect. One hot guy character, bam, log in!
Recovery of an MMO Junkie is a relatively recent anime. It's from 2017, and the author, who I'm going to hold this up so I don't mess up the author's name, is Rin Kokuyo. They're brilliant, and they wrote an anime based partially off of their own life, and I think that's why it really speaks to me on a level that no anime has spoken to me before. I suffer from depression. There's nothing wrong with the fact that I can admit that. I've got doctors who help me with it. I have a supportive family and husband, Kane. Hey, Kane.
Hey.
Thanks.
Hey.
Love you.
Love you.
And I'm really lucky because I do have a great support system to deal with my depression. Even when it gets a little out of whack. I'm not on medication because I'm not that bad. I go through periods of way lows and periods of manic highs, but mostly lately I've been pretty even. And I know when I'm going into a manic period, and I know when I'm hitting one of those rock bottoms. And I can kind of use that as a gauge to know when I need to go to the doctor and when I need to go see a therapist. But in Japan, there is a epidemic of depression, and with that mental illness comes a lot of different anxiety issues, and recovery of an MMO junkie takes place in the life of Morimori. That's her nickname, Morioka, and she suffers from depression, and they never say it outright. She also clearly has some kind of social anxiety and just generalized anxiety disorder from watching the anime. Moriko Morioka is a 30-something woman who is unmarried, and she quits her job and she goes home on her last day, and she doesn't know what to do with her life. So she sleeps for like 24 hours. And then she has to figure out what to do. From there on out, she explores what used to make her happy, which was actually advice that my therapist gave me when I was in a really deep low a few years ago. He said, you need to find your joy. You need to find what makes you happy. So she goes and finds an MMORPG. And she remembers all these great times she had on one called Fruits de Mer. Actually, she joined Fruits de Mer. That's the new one. And her old one shut down. Much like a lot of us, we have a certain persona that we keep online. When we play games, we can play whatever we want. In Monster Hunter, I almost always play a woman, but I usually experiment with the textures and the colors and everything so that I can play a different type of person. And in this, she plays a man named Hayashi, and she joins a guild. She makes some great online friendships, and she finds herself playing this game a whole lot while reminiscing about an old game that she used to rush home from work to play. Like most MMORPGs, there are individual quests and character building quests and special quests for holidays. And the anime does this beautiful job of recreating that experience and the emotional attachments that you form with your friends. And then there's always that line at some point that you cross where your in-character friendships slowly start to become your out-of-character friendships. And that's how recovery of an MMO junkie slowly starts to return her to the real world. So one day she is out and she's not feeling well, and she bumps into a guy, and she's feeling so bad that she actually faints, and that guy takes her to the hospital, pays her bill, she gets his number, he gets her number, and they communicate a little bit and try to go on a date. And then it turns out that she thinks he's just doing it because he feels sorry for her, and so they break it off. And then another person gets involved. Yuta, who is the young man who took her to the hospital and paid her medical bill, has a friend, Homare. Homare actually used to work with Morimori and is the one who gave her that nickname. And Morimori winds up somehow going on a date with him after he finds out about this whole thing and realizes that his friend Yuta isn't going to pursue her for whatever reason. Things are complicated. It's a social hierarchy, and things are weird in Japan, and so Homare realizes what is happening and tries to intervene between these two because he actually thinks that they would be a really cute couple. I agree, but I'm a fan of the anime, so yeah. And that is as far in the plot as I am going to go, because I do not want to spoil it for you. There is only one season, unfortunately, because the creator, Rin, has fallen ill and is dealing with some health issues. And this actually started out as a comic online, and then a manga, then an anime. So it might be some time before we get a second season. Now, how does this relate to my life? Well, I've already told you I suffer from depression. And with that depression comes anxiety. When I met Kane, I was totally addicted to AOL RPG. Don't shame me. Don't shame me. This was before World of Warcraft was a thing. I'd been playing it since 1993. I had 3 characters. one I didn't really play very much, my main character, and then a secondary character. And I kind of flipped back and forth because they had this chat window, and I kind of flipped back and forth between my two main characters because you had a buddy list and it would show you when people would pop on. So it was really common that if you had two characters, you'd have your buddies from the other character on that list, so that if there was somebody you really wanted to see and play with, you could hop over to your other character because it would tell you that they had come online. So this is all text-based there because it was AOL chat rooms. And so you'd be like, enters the tavern, saunters over to the bar, leans under the bar, says, barkeep, give me whatever's great in a clean glass. You know, because for some reason that Western line just was like super popular, even on AOL. And everybody did it. Oh, I'm playing a half elf, half angel, half dragon. Yeah, that's three halves. Suspension of disbelief. I want whatever's good, barkeep, in a clean glass. And a lot of barkeeps just got to the point where they were just like, all my glasses are clean, you out. Anywho, there were guilds, there were clans, there were families, all on AOL. I helped run a castle that was called Kingdom of Golden Mist. At one point, I was part of the Write-In War Council, the United Guild Council. I was in several guilds. I also ran another kingdom later on, and kingdoms were kind of like a land that you could play in, and you had an official map, and then you broke it out depending on what you wanted your government system. So ours had castle, and then you had classes, and I was a shadow in the Kingdom of Golden Mist because I'm a goth kid, grew up as a goth kid, and I was like, I'm gonna be a shadow. We're spies and assassins and dark and moody. Ugh. I made a lot of friends on there. Some of them I still talk to today, even though 1983 was a very long time ago. Don't do the math. Don't. And I still talk to some of those people to this day. And my friend who played Maggie, I know you're watching, and my friend Sean in California who played Draven and Rain and about a half a dozen other characters that I interacted with. There's quite a few people that I still talk to online. And I found out recently, and much to my horror, that there's Discord communities now that are running the AOL RPG world, which was called Write-In. And I was tempted for a minute, but it took up so much real estate in my life at that time. I'm talking like I would come home from work, and I worked 2 jobs. So in any given day, I was working 10 to 12 hours, and I would role play for 4 or 5. Sometimes I'd have friends over, or my partner would want to watch something, and I'd be on the computer happily typing away, multitasking. I have no idea how I did this. Sometimes I would be triple tasking. I would be doing that, playing a game on my DS, and hanging out with friends and my husband and my cats. I have no idea how I used to triple and sometimes quad task because, oh my gosh, I just don't even want to talk about that. But it was a thing, and I also participated in role-playing on IRC chats as well because they had their own world, and that was crazy too. So back to the RPG world. I actually got so close with some of the people online that I was talking to every day, and we would talk in character and out of character, in private chats, in little chat bubbles, not just in the rooms. And it was really magical. They were really good friends. They would help me through emotional issues, through some relationship stuff. Sorry, Kane. And relationship stuff, family stuff, they helped me through deaths. We had friends who passed away in the role-playing world. Like, for real, they're players, not their characters. And it was a family. And recovery of an MMO Junkie reminds me of that. I can close my eyes and see my main character, Kia Kilvin. And Kia was an elf. She was half drow and half high elf. And she had tattoos all across her arms. And as you can see, I don't have tattoos, so this was a fantasy life for me. And she had earrings all up and down her ears. My ears reject everything, so I can't have pierced ears. Sadness! Sadness! I've had clip-ons my whole life because the few times I've had pierced ears, it's been a terrible, horrible, bad, really bad thing. And she had a very active life. She went from being a fighter character to an assassin at one point. She ran a brothel. She ran kingdoms. She ran guilds. And I spent many, many hours developing her and changing over the years. She had kids. Good grief. She had like so many kids. Some were hers, some were adopted children. And she had 3 dead husbands and 1 missing. And then the other one, oh yeah, she had her own kingdom. When I finally stopped playing on AOL a few years before AOL finally shut down the chat rooms. And yeah, it got to a point though where I felt I was playing an unhealthy amount, and so I slowly started to cut back and delve back into the real world. And then I was in role-playing groups, tabletop ones, and I'm in 2 bands, and life caught back up with me. But I still remember those days really, really fondly. Also, there are these moments in the show, like there's one where Hayashi and Lily are sitting there watching the sunset, and that kind of reminds me of my days when I used to play MMOs very heavily. I was a huge World of Warcraft player. I was in a guild for the first few years, and then I did something that generally other players have referred to as crazy, because I just got to the point where I liked to solo. And I would wander out into the wilderness or go to the shoreline and spend hours just seeing how far out I could get, or testing the environment, or running into high level areas just to see how far I could get. And everybody was like, what are you doing? Why don't you have a group? Why aren't you raiding? I'm like, I don't want to raid. Raiding's not for me. It's not what I do. So I was doing all the quests. Then I was breaking stuff and putting in tech tickets to World of Warcraft. Hey, my character's stuck. Every time she respawns, I fall through the world again. Help. I found a hole in the undead lands where my character just went, respawn, respawn. It was about that big, but like seriously, I just hit it perfectly. Yeah. And they were like, wow, thanks for letting us know about this. Because it was in a random spot. They fixed it. There was one time I spent a while just jumping up a mountain, and then I got to see the area that they were developing the Burning Crusade in, because you could actually see that. That was crazy. It's like I got to the top of this mountain area where you could technically not go, but I just kept jumping and jumping and jumping and jumping. And then I was on the edge of the top of a mountain. And there it was, the developmental area where you could see they were building the level, but nothing was finished yet. It was really beautiful. And then sometimes in games like Star Wars, I would ride out in Tatooine in my speeder. I would listen to the wind, and I would just sit there and watch the sun's set on Tatooine was I wanted to live that life in Star Wars. I wanted to see that horizon and those sunsets. And those are special, very special moments for me. And I think that that's why Recovery of an MMO Junkie really sits right here in the chest. Because there's a character who acts like me, who looks like me, who talks like me, has similar issues that I have, has had experiences like I've had in the online digital world, and yet exists in another plane. It's like watching an isekai. I'm the character in that anime. That anime is an isekai of my life. And it's just really amazing that this artist, this author and artist, created this world that resonates with me right here in my chest with every beat of my heart. So thank you so much for creating Recovery of an MMO Junkie. I needed to know that there was somebody out there who felt and thought and spoke the same way that I did. Recovery of an MMO Junkie is also really interesting because it literally in the show asks the question, can you love somebody you've never met? And I can tell you, you can. You can love somebody you have never met. I have so many friends that I've met. I have one that I call my sister, and we're all like a huge family, but I knew players that eventually got together and got married or had long-term relationships, and they didn't know each other until they'd been playing together for a while. They didn't talk to each other out of character or anything, but they had these feelings that somehow emerged in the actions of their characters over time that made them form a bond. And then they started to connect outside and talk on the phone or text or, have a relationship where they felt they could move into the same area together, move into the house, make out a little bit. Oh yeah. And I just love that they included that in Recovery of an MMO Junkie. That's not what happened with me. I met Kane in a hobby town, but that's a video for a different day. We really should do a video about how we met. I think that'd be cute. People might vomit. I'm just kidding. But the question, can you love somebody you never met, is yes. Yes, you can. As long as they're telling the truth. Because that's always a thing. In the age of the internet, you always have to look out for catfishing and things like that. But it is absolutely possible to love somebody you have never met or spoken with out of character. Just because they're so genuine in their character and it comes through somehow. If you liked this video, if you like Life in a Box and our other geeky content, make sure that you click that like button, you subscribe, and you hit the bell. Leave us a comment and let us know how we're doing.